More than 700 structures have been destroyed, nearly 65,000 people have been forced from their homes, and 3 wildfires burning through Spokane County remain at 0% containment. Washington's governor has declared a statewide emergency. The mayor of Spokane is calling it the worst natural disaster her region has ever faced, and as of this week, a 37-year-old suspect is in custody on arson charges connected to fires that started this entire crisis. So today, I want to walk you through exactly what's happening on the ground in and around Washington's second largest city, how this escalated so fast, and what residents and officials are actually dealing with right now. Make sure you're subscribed before we get into it, because the situation is still actively unfolding. The fires began Saturday, August 1st, when 3 separate blazes broke out in Spokane County within a short window of each other. The Old Trails Fire, northwest of Airway Heights, the Autumn Lane Fire, near 9 Mile Falls in northwestern Spokane, and the Fairview Fire near Meade. Conditions that day were about as favorable for rapid fire spread as they get. Extreme heat, strong winds, and exceptionally dry vegetation combined to let the fires expand explosively almost as soon as they ignited. Those conditions were serious enough that the National Weather Service issued a particularly dangerous situation fire weather warning across parts of central and eastern Washington that day, a designation reserved for the most extreme, highest confidence fire weather setups. By Sunday morning, more than 600 structures had already burned. By Monday, that number had climbed past 700, with officials warning the final total could reach as high as 100 once full damage assessments are complete. Spokane County Fire District 3 Fire Chief Cody Rohrbach said 640 structures were destroyed in the Old Trails. Fire alone. Officials have been careful to note that they haven't yet determined how many of the destroyed or damaged structures are homes, businesses, or schools. That level of detailed assessment takes time, and it's still ongoing. As of this week, the 3 fires collectively making up what's being called the Spokane Complex Fire have burned more than 8,000 acres combined, and they remain at 0% containment according to InsiWeb, the interagency wildfire tracking system. The Old Trails Fire has burned roughly 3,600 acres. The Autumn Lane Fire has grown to more than 5,600 acres and has become firefighters' top priority given its continued threat to homes and nearby communities, and the Fairview Fire has burned close to 1,000 acres. Nearly 65,000 people are under evacuation orders, spanning roughly 18,800 homes across the affected area. Washington's Public Lands Commissioner, Dave Upthegrove, said the situation extends well beyond Spokane, too. 15 to 17 major wildfires are currently burning across the state, having consumed somewhere between 250,000 and 262,000 acres in total, with roughly 5,000 personnel responding statewide. More than 10,000 additional structures remain at risk as crews continue working to establish containment lines. I want to spend real time on what this looks like for the people living through it, because the statistics alone don't fully capture it. Corey Hobson, a longtime resident of Spokane's North Indian Trail neighborhood, posted video showing charred trees and blackened ground in his neighborhood. Not every house was destroyed, but a lot of them were, he said. I've never seen anything like this before. I've lived in Spokane my whole life, and I'm 55 years old. That's the kind of testimony that's been echoing across the region this week. Longtime residents describing devastation unlike anything they've witnessed in decades of living there. CNN's On the Ground reporting described evacuees leaving home with little more than they could carry, some later returning to burned areas and stepping through hot rubble to try to collect whatever belongings survived. Governor Bob Ferguson declared a statewide emergency on Saturday, prohibiting most outdoor and agricultural burning across Washington, and has requested immediate support from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, along with a separate request for longer-term recovery funding already underway. He said he'd spoken directly with President Trump by phone, who expressed his support for what the people are going through. Mayor Lisa Brown described the situation directly as the worst natural disaster our region has faced. When asked when evacuees might be able to return home, she was honest about the uncertainty. It could be a week, could be weeks. One of the more serious individual incidents this week involved Spokane's manned Grandstaff VA Medical Center, which was forced to close entirely after the wildfire evacuation zone expanded to affect the campus and surrounding neighborhoods. Evacuated veteran patients were transferred to the care of local partner hospitals, and the VA campus remains closed until further notice. That's a genuinely significant complication layered on top of an already difficult disaster response, displacing not just residents from their homes, but an entire hospital's active patient population, requiring rapid coordination with other regional medical facilities to make sure continuity of care wasn't disrupted for people who were already in the hospital's care when the evacuation order came. There was also a tense stretch earlier this week when 14 people were reported unaccounted for. As of an update Tuesday morning, the Spokane County Sheriff's Office confirmed all 14 had been found safe. Genuinely good news. And worth including specifically because it's easy for a story like this to only report the worst case numbers as they climb, without also reporting the moments where the news actually improved. I want to highlight something that's easy to lose in a story this dramatic. As of the most recent reporting, no deaths and no serious injuries have been confirmed from these fires, despite the scale of structural destruction. That's a genuinely significant outcome given how fast these fires spread and how many thousands of people had to evacuate on short notice. And it reflects real, effective work by emergency responders getting evacuation orders out ahead of the flames in most affected areas. Officials have been careful to note that the full scope of damage will take time to assess completely, and that note of caution matters. But the absence of confirmed fatalities so far, in a disaster that's destroyed more than 700 structures, is worth stating plainly rather than assuming the worst by default. A significant development this week, authorities announced Monday night that a 37-year-old suspect is in custody in connection with the fires. That's a genuinely important piece of this story, since it means at least part of what's driving this crisis may not simply be a matter of extreme weather-meeting dry conditions, but a deliberately set fire that then spread catastrophically under those same extreme conditions. I want to be careful here, since, as of this writing, full details of the charges and the specific fire or fires connected to this arrest haven't been comprehensively reported. And that's exactly the kind of detail worth verifying against updated local reporting before treating any specific narrative about the fire's origin as settled. Beyond the fires themselves, this disaster has produced a cascade of secondary problems the region is having to manage simultaneously. More than 40,000 customers lost power as the fires damaged electrical infrastructure across the affected area. Wildfire smoke has pushed air quality into the very unhealthy category in parts of the region, adding a genuine respiratory health hazard on top of the direct fire threat, particularly for anyone with asthma, COPD, or other respiratory sensitivity, one recurring, frustrating complication worth knowing about. Officials have repeatedly had to ask the public to keep drones out of restricted airspace over the fire zones, after multiple unauthorized drone incursions forced firefighting helicopters and air tankers to be grounded until the airspace could be cleared. That's a genuinely dangerous problem specific to modern wildfire response. A single unauthorized drone can ground an entire fleet of firefighting aircraft for safety reasons, directly costing valuable time during exactly the kind of extreme fire growth these blazes have shown all week. If you're anywhere near an active wildfire zone, this is worth internalizing directly. Flying a personal drone near a fire, even out of simple curiosity or a desire to capture footage, can measurably slow down the actual firefighting effort and put both aircraft crews and people on the ground at greater risk. The scale of the firefighting mobilization has been substantial. The Spokane Valley Fire Department reported having 72 firefighters on duty on a single day this week, the highest staffing level for a single day in the department's history. Crews from across Washington and neighboring states have joined the response, supported by aerial firefighting resources, whenever weather conditions have allowed safe flying. The Spokane Convention Center has been operating as a Red Cross evacuation shelter, with more than 400 people staying there overnight during the height of the crisis, and several Spokane area hotels have offered discounted lodging specifically for residents displaced by the fires. Evacuation zones have continued shifting throughout the week as fire behavior changes. Some zones have been downgraded as containment efforts progress in certain areas, while new evacuation orders have been issued elsewhere, including a mandatory evacuation issued Sunday for parts of neighboring Stevens County near the Spokane River, as the fire threat expanded beyond the initial Spokane County footprint. It's worth understanding the specific conditions that allowed this to grow from 3 separate ignitions on a single Saturday into one of the most destructive wildfire events in the state's recent history within just a few days. The combination of extreme heat, strong sustained winds, and exceptionally dry vegetation is exactly the recipe that turns a fire from a containable, localized event into a fast-moving, structure-threatening emergency. Wind specifically does 2 dangerous things during a wildfire. It pushes flames forward faster than firefighters can typically establish containment lines, and it can carry embers well ahead of the main fire front, igniting new spot fires in areas crews haven't even reached yet. That combination is part of why all 3 fires reached 0% containment status and held there for days, even with a substantial firefighting response already mobilized. The wind was working against containment efforts as fast as crews could attempt to establish them. This also fits into the broader pattern of an active 2026 fire season across the western United States, more broadly, with officials noting that Washington's crisis is unfolding alongside numerous other wildfires, straining firefighting resources across multiple states simultaneously, meaning mutual aid and equipment sharing between states, which wildfire response depends on heavily during a busy season, is itself operating under more strain than during a quieter year. If you're anywhere in the Spokane area or elsewhere in Washington currently under an evacuation order, the most important guidance remains the simplest. Follow official evacuation instructions immediately rather than waiting to personally assess the danger, given how quickly these specific fires have demonstrated the ability to change direction and intensity under shifting wind conditions. Check official Spokane County and Washington State Emergency Operations Center channels directly for the most current evacuation zone maps, since those zones have continued shifting throughout the week, and secondhand information can be outdated by the time it reaches you. If you're dealing with the very unhealthy air quality without being in a direct evacuation zone, limit outdoor exposure as much as possible, particularly if you have any respiratory condition, and treat a hazy sky or the smell of smoke as a cue to stay indoors with windows closed and air filtration running if you have it, regardless of the specific hourly air quality reading at any given moment. If you've been displaced and are looking for shelter, the Spokane Convention Center has been operating as a Red Cross shelter, and several area hotels have offered discounted rates specifically for evacuees. Check current availability through the Red Cross Northwest Region or Spokane County's own emergency information channels. And if you're anywhere near an active fire zone with a personal drone, please don't fly it near the fires, however tempting the footage might be. Every grounded aircraft has lost firefighting time during exactly the window when these fires have shown they can grow fastest. I'll be tracking this closely as containment efforts continue. As the full scope of structural damage gets assessed, officials have already warned the final structure count could climb well past 700, potentially toward 100, and as more details emerge about the arson investigation and the suspect now in custody. I want to be honest about the uncertainty ahead. Senator Maria Cantwell said plainly during a news conference this week, "We are not out of danger. The next couple of days will be challenging." That's the accurate, current assessment from the people closest to this response, and I'd rather pass that along directly than offer false reassurance that the worst has already passed. As it says in Psalm 34, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." For everyone in Spokane and across eastern Washington who's lost a home this week, who's sleeping in a shelter or a hotel room tonight instead of their own bed, and for the firefighters who set a staffing record just to keep up with this crisis, that's worth holding on to. Keep them in your thoughts, and I'll bring you the next update as this situation develops. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.